In an instance like this, it seems to me that you do well to identify what it is that your opponent most fears.
And exploit it, my precious.
Wait, that's Galadriel's line. My Gavanin. Hello, in Sindarin. I am the Tolkien Shed, and I have seen the 4th episode of The Rings of Power. And I have to say, I am left just amazed. How does Amazon manage to waste so much potential? Today we'll talk about the question of why isn't the type of story presented in the show engaging? Why cannot I get invested in it? Let's get right into it. Spoilers ahead. So now, the story from the Southlands. We begin where we left last time. We see Adar coming and orcs in respect bowing before him. And now we are revealed. How does Adar look? He looks like an elf, somewhat disfigured, but definitely an elf. And he really seems to be respected among the orcs. They treat him almost like a father. There is a scene when he meets with one wounded orc, and he touches him very gently and treats him like a son. Later he just puts an end to his misery and kills him, but orcs still do really respect him. Maybe it's their ways. But there we are left alone with Arondir and Adar, and they speak. Arondir tries to learn who Adar is. We are not exactly revealed that. We just learned that he was in Beleriand, now sunk lands of Middle-earth that were in the First Age, and he seems to know these lands very well. He asks some strange questions, immediately assumes that Arondir lived by one of the rivers, and that he was also by this river once or more. The problem is that in Beleriand there were many rivers, and saying that someone lived in the mouth of one of them is not saying much, but yeah. The key to the others meeting with Arondir is that Arondir is to bring a message to the Southlanders that are in the Watchtower. We will learn what this message tells later. Now we see those villagers. Apparently Bronwyn is their leader, and the only reason for that is that it was her idea to get to the tower. Weren't there any structures, any leadership among them to lead them in the moments of crisis? Apparently not. There is just Bronwyn. But she is not respected by all. And she and all the community and all the villagers that gathered in the tower have a serious problem. They do not have food. Was it all eaten? Was it all stolen? Was it all is it now all rotten? No, they didn't bring it with themselves. They left it in their village. Not only them, but many villagers that came from other villages. It was all left. They have no food, but they propose to get back to the village and get the food that is there. which means they didn't bring it with themselves. How unthoughtful you have to be to escape your own home, to run and prepare for a long siege in this elven tower and not take your food with you. Well, some propose to go hunting, but some want to go back to the villages and take the food. It is dangerous because orcs are out there, so Bronwyn forbids that. But her son and one of his friends ignore this command and go away to their village. How did they get out of this tower? We never learn. We never learn also why do they not sneak around. They just come to the village like there is no danger. Well, they gather the food, but when the clouds appear, which means that orcs can now get out, Theo's supposed friend runs without a word and leaves him in the village. Theo is then in a tavern, and he fights with orc that appears. Theo uses the sword that he has found. It apparently retracted again to this broken state. He reforges it by stabbing himself. An orc is very patient with that. He waits for the sword to reforge itself and then attacks. Well, not attacks, he demands, "Give it da!" and expects apparently to be given the sword. Apparently it's something that orcs very much desire. Perhaps the weapon they sought. The orc also does not call his companions, so Theo runs and hides in a well. But we see that there are many orcs in the village now. The one that chased him indeed could not see him hiding, but the others, well, we are never shown how Theo hid, so we are supposed to think that he just was invisible for them. Well, he ends up in this well and he spends many hours. We see that later the coward that left him in the village returns, and that's how Bronwyn learns that Theo stayed in the village. And when some time has passed, we see that in the night Theo gets out of the well and tries to run. But then the same orc that found him earlier finds him again. And when he's about to kill him, there, out of the darkness, appears Elrond and kills the orc. Wait, why does he have his weapons with him? Why was he given arms? Hadar knows that he is his enemy. He's a messenger, not someone to be given weapon to destroy his plans. It is the sword that he has, that the orcs sought for so long. And now because Arondir was given his weapons back, the sword is lost for the orcs again. And why nobody saw him coming, and why was he able to escape with Theo? We have no time to ask those questions. We just see them running in a forest, the orcs chasing them. There is the orcs use their bows and shoot arrows. Arondir, without even looking, catches an arrow and shoots it back. It very much stretches the reality. It's unbelievable what he can do in that situation. Then, out of nowhere, without reason, without showing how did she get there appears Bronwyn. She joins them and they run all together out of the forest. And because the plot needs it, there is the sun. The morning has come, and now we learn that orcs do not just despise the sun and feel uncomfortable in its presence. They cannot get out in the sun. They just burn like vampires. And they apparently they have nothing to cover themselves, no clothes. Wait. But certainly they do not have any weapons that could get someone from a distance, yes? Especially that they stand, the three of them stands just there waiting for something. Wait, it isn't right. Well, don't ask questions. They just get away, and orcs apparently cannot aim, even if the target is a few foot from them. But yeah, Theo, Arondir, and Bronwyn safely get to the tower, and Arondir finally reveals the message. It is, bow before me, swear fealty, leave your lands, and you will live. Well, it's very simple, so almost obvious that Adar would demand their surrender, so it wasn't really necessary, and definitely wasn't necessary to send so well-trained elf to deliver this message. But yeah, that's what happened. And we see also Theo talking to Waldrick, the previous owner of the sword. He seems to know very much about it. It is revealed that the sword is a power that can control the people of the Southlands. In what way? How does it work? I really hope we will learn that, but we are not shown that in this episode. And Waldrick seems to be a devoted servant of Sauron, and he assumes that Theo, because he found and uses the sword, also is a servant of Sauron. And there is one final scene in the Southlands. It is Ada that learns that the sword is in the watchtower. Now we move to Eregion, and we see that several months must have passed, because a forge, as you can see here, is definitely being built, and the foundations are laid, and the work is all the workers are all around, and it's a lively place that must have been built for a long time. And the problem of this show is generally that we do not get the flow of time. We do not know what happens when. And that's here it's a rather minor issue. We see the Celebrimbor talking to Elrond, and Celebrimbor now, after centuries of having this knowledge, only now suddenly remembers that once Elrondil, Elrond's father, told him that Celebrimbor's fate will be in the hands of one of his sons. We'll see how convenient it is that Celebrimbor remembered that just now and never mentioned that earlier, even though it was his fate prophesied by one of the greatest heroes that were ever in Middle-earth, but he forgot it. Yeah, that's like forgetting your wallet. Easy, happens every time. But it serves its purpose, let's say that. Then we learn that dwarves all dwarves cannot hide that they try to hide something. It is the workers, it is Disa, it is Durin, avoiding Celebrimbor and Elrond. They all try to hide something, and Elrond goes to Moria to learn what do they hide. There he meets Disa, and apparently Durin is away and can't meet him. And Disa makes everything she can to let us, the audience, know that first Durin is close, but he does not want to see Elrond. That she knows about that, and that the song that the children sing somewhere is connected to this whole issue. That's very clear from her behavior. And even though she lies to Elrond and tells him that Durin is away in a mine that is very far away under the mountains, in the next scene she meets Durin just before the house, and in the open for all to be seen. And Durin and Elrond overhears them, not in a regular way, but from a far distance. We learn that he has apparently this power of hearing something from very far. I wonder if it will be applied consequently later, if he will use it ever again. But he hears them and now knows that Durin spends his time in a secret mine under Mirror. So Elrond immediately finds a secret passage behind the wall, or the wall first. He finds it. How there are many corridors in Moria. There are many walls. It is all walls and corridors almost, but he just instantly finds the right one, and he knows the key to open it. It is the song that Disa's and Durin's children sung in the rooms, and so fortunate that Elrond heard it all the verses, and that it was the only thing that he needed to open the secret door. Yes. Maybe we should talk about the fact that the dwarves give the secret password and the children sing it for everybody to hear, and there are no more safety measures. Yeah, but who would have a think about that? What is it for? Elrond just gets in the secret passage because he has extreme luck, and there he sees that on the walls there is, surprise, mithril, the incredibly strong metal, and Durin finds him. He immediately accuses him of spying and thinks that the only purpose that Elrond came to Moria was to find mithril, and Elrond does not know anything about that. Is honest. He didn't know anything about mithril and came just out of curiosity. But later he lies that to Moria itself and to Durin he came just because of their friendship, not because of Celebrimbor and his affairs. But we have no reason to suspect that Elrond would ever came to Moria if it wasn't for the command of Gil-galad and Celebrimbor. Later, Durin makes Elrond swear that he will never tell anybody about mithril. Elrond swears, gives an oath, and then we learn what is the reason for all this secrecy. What could it be? What dangers may dwarves fear to hide this treasure that they found under the mountains? Listen carefully. It is dangerous to mine. If you expected that I will add anything more, well, I have bad news for you. It is the only reason that we are given for this all secrecy. We are never told anything more. We can imagine that they don't want for everybody to know, but that's never told. And the explicit reason that Durin states is it is dangerous to mine mithril. What does secrecy help with that? We never learn, but we are left again with no time to wonder at this for first Durin gives a shard of mithril to Elrond as a token of their friendship, and suddenly a shaft behind them falls down, prisoning some dwarves that were mining there. In a later scene we see Disa and other dwarves gathered and singing a song to the mountain to release those that were imprisoned by it, and immediately we learn, because of Durin, that they were indeed released by the work of other dwarves, and we see that Durin is extremely angry at his father, for he just forbade to anybody to mine mithril anymore. It is it's forbidden to mine it, and Durin is furious. He doesn't want to talk to his father ever again. Then we get to the part that I really, really liked, which is Elrond talking to Durin. Elrond reminds Durin about his own father, Elrond, with whom he will never meet again, for he is among the stars, and Elrond is on Middle-earth, and Elrond tells that he would give almost everything to meet his father again, and that Durin has this possibility to meet, to talk, to spend time with his father, and he should really use it. It's a really valuable lesson, and I really liked it. I really liked also the friendly rambling that occurs later between Durin and Elrond, and we learn that they still quarrel about who saved who at their first meeting, and how many trolls they slew to when they first met. It is a really enjoyable scene. And what follows, the dialogue between Durin and his father, is also quite good. I will give praise to what is worthwhile and meaningful, but unfortunately it is only those few scenes that I can give my praise to. So Durin talks to his father, and his father tells him about an ancient belief that I don't like, that apparently Durin didn't know this belief that is popular among the dwarves. The belief is that the forebears of a new king speak to him and are with him, are close to him when he gets to the throne. It is and Durin's father tells him that Durin does not have to wait for him to die and to be close with him. He can be close with him now, and that he will, for his last day, till his last day, will be with Durin. And that's really meaningful. That's something I'm glad to see. And there is one last scene between those two. Durin is given a quest to go to Lindon and learn about the true purpose of the elves. He does not suspect Elrond of any mischief and ill-placed desires, but they are suspicious about Gil-galad's plans, so they want to learn more about them. Now we move to Númenor. There we start the episode with a vision. The Muriel stands and she sees a doom of Númenor, a great wave destroying the islands. That vision, that image, will be used later. And now we see that Muriel really dreads some awful fate that can fall on her people and her island. Then we see those endangered people that don't really like Galadriel's presence. Even they are in some sort of hysteria. They think that Galadriel appearing means that elves will come to Númenor, they will take their land, their jobs, and just make everybody poor or landless, and they'll cause so much harm, which is unjustified. Galadriel just came out of the sea. She's living in 3 days, and the people, not just a few people, but a whole crowd is gathering and chanting and shouting towards the queen that she's an elf lover and that isn't the way, that somebody should do something about that and not listen to this elf, get rid of her. That's strange. That's basically strange. That's unjustified what they think what will happen. Then we see the Chancellor, Farazon, who tries to use the situation to his advantage to gain trust among the people and to gather political power. Earlier we see his son, Kemen. He appears, I think, twice. Later he meets with Aryen, Isildur's sister. They get to know each other and flirt a bit. About other characters, we see also Isildur himself. He is sailing through the sea. It's a few days before the final trial for him to become a member of the Sea Guard, and we see again that he is called by something in the west, in the Númenor. And that's the reason why he apparently decides to resign from service in the Sea Guard. And he resigns in pretty thoughtless manner, because he will let loose one of the ropes, endangering other his crewmates, and he's rightly lectured by the sea master, by the captain, and he is dismissed from the Sea Guard forever. And for some reason, it is never explained properly, two of his friends that had nothing to do with the whole incident are also dismissed. Of course, they blame Isildur, but there is no real reason that they should be dismissed. So the whole conflict that takes off from here is pretty, again, meaningless. There is no real reason, there is nothing Isildur could do to prevent that, except for resigning in normal way. But but again, he is not responsible for this strange decision of the captain. But his friends, of course, blame him. There is a fight among them. Later, Isildur talks to his sister, and then he explains that he resigned because he wanted to go to the west. But then he says that he won't do that because he shamed his family name. So let me get this straight. He wanted to go to the west, so he shamed his family name to be able to go there, and he won't go there because he shamed his family name. That's pretty convoluted, or just nonsensical. This, again, conflict revolving about this matter is really poorly thought out, let's put it lightly. There is no meaning in that. There is nothing of substance that we can hang on and really understand the motivations of the characters. But enough about Isildur. He'll appear once in this episode, once more. Let's get to the main character, to Galadriel. We see her in her usual moods, so arrogance, disdain and pride. She explains to Muriel what she has found in the Hall of Lore and the danger in the Southlands, along with the news that Halbrand is lost king of the Southlands. And she not exactly asks, but demands that Queen to give her an army and go to Middle-earth and fight with the evil that lies there. Queen obviously refuses to take orders from a stranger, and there is a short exchange of words. In this dialogue we get to hear the great line, the peak of character writing, stating emotions. The line,
"There's a tempest in me."
It's Galadriel announces very very proudly and in a high manner, but for this particular sentence and many others in the show, there is not real context that it works. The word tempest was used in a different meaning, and later is used to mean something different. So it seems like someone thought of this line and thought it very worthwhile to put it in the show, but there was no real reason to use it. But it was used anyway. Well, in the end, Galadriel ends up telling Queen Muriel that she has no authority to question her, and that she will get to a true ruler of Númenor to get his permission. And it's of course not Queen Muriel, but her father that she thinks to be the true ruler. For this words, she's put in jail. It is quite satisfying to see it. After all arrogance that Galadriel presents, and she is put there right next to Halbrand. Well, they talk about the whole situation. Halbrand has to explain to Galadriel, this hundreds years old elf, who could gather all wisdom, kindness and grace, and should to resemble in even the least sense the character that we know from books or Peter Jackson's movies. this Halbrand, who haven't lived a small part of Galadriel's life, has to explain to her that she does not fight orcs or trolls in Númenor, but people, and she should use something more clever than arrogance. Galadriel, which is stunning, listens to him when he explains that she should find a way to identify the fears of her opponents. She jumps on that and ends with exploit them. Here we see her attitude. She just wants to use everything she can to belittle, to humiliate, and destroy everybody she sees, and that stands in her way. There's no place for kindness, for thought even, and for grace that there should be. She just wants to use fear and exploitation to get her way. But Halbrand again tames her and tells her that she should show her opponents the way to master their fears, and that's the way that she'll master them. And they both identify the apparent fear of Queen Miriel, which is connected to her father, because at mentioning him, she put Galadriel in jail. We are interrupted with Pharazôn coming to Galadriel in jail with some guards, telling her that she is now free. She will be sent to Middle Earth. What was exactly her purpose? What was her desire? So she gets what she wanted. So what she will do? Probably she will embark on a ship, go to Middle Earth, gather the army of elves, and destroy the armies of orcs that gathered in the Southlands, right? Right? Well, Galadriel has different plans. She attacks the guards and somehow overpowers them. She locks them all three or four even of them in a cell, in her own cell, to which they still have the key. They don't really try to oppose her. She just pushes them there, and they stand in line and wait for it. So the whole fight is just pathetic and not worth watching and enjoying, because there is nothing realistic about it. How she overpowers four men without any effort. Then she still has to get past through Pharazôn, but then Halbrand tells Pharazôn that he won't have to stop her or chase her if he will know where she will head to. Galadriel escapes, and we learn that we cannot really trust Halbrand. And the next we see of Galadriel is on the top of a tower, when she tries to meet with the king. She breaks in, and she finds the king, and Queen Miriel is right there. That talk is really between Queen and Galadriel. It's again some back and forth about being faithful to the elves and not, basically. Miriel advises Galadriel to go back and surrender to the guards that wait for her. Galadriel tries to apologize for her earlier remarks and tries to get everything in order, and at some point, without a proper context, there is this line, "Now it's time for truth between us," and from this moment on, Miriel treats Galadriel like a close ally, with whom he might not agree every time, but with whom will she talk about all secrets and will trust her like well, a trusted commander or advisor. So they move to another chamber, and there we see a plant, a seeing stone. Touching it, Galadriel sees the doom of Númenor, the vision we have seen earlier, the wave that destroys the island. Muriel tells her that she believes that it is the fate and that waits for Númenor. It is the doom, and she wants to avoid it. And that the prophecy, the vision that we see, begins with Galadriel arriving. I wish we could see this in the vision. We had an opportunity twice in this episode, but we never see that. We are only told. But well, the question is still how to avoid the doom that awaits for Númenor. Muriel says that her father believed that, and she also believes that Númenor is land of gifts, a gift for virtue, and it can be taken because of evil. But she and her father disagree on what this virtue and this evil is. Her father believed that being faithful to the elven ways was the virtue, and Muriel is not so sure about that. And she tries another way, because her father, when he tried to go back to the elven ways, caused trouble, almost a catastrophe, in which people rebelled. That's why Muriel now sits on a throne, and she is fearful about following her father's steps. Here we have to analyze what does it really mean to follow the elven ways, because we're not really told what would that mean. We're just told that it's assisting the elves or following their orders, which doesn't seem quite right. There must be something more behind that. There should be something, at least, of, well, real virtue, of honor, of respect, of being faithful to each other, of caring for what's really, well, precious, what's about nature, about each other, about cherishing what we have and not being jealous of something that the others have. That's the real problem of the people of Númenor in the books, in Silmarillion, Akal Labeth, the tale of the fall of Númenor, because people of Númenor have lost the trust in the elven ways. They now envy the elves because of their immortality. They want to have it also. They do not want to die, and they blame the elves and the Valars, and they want to reach immortality. That's the whole struggle that they have. But again, that is what I take from the books. I did not learn anything about that in those 4 episodes that I have seen. There is nothing to indicate that is the problem. It is just people hate the elves, but following the elves is virtuous, so you should do it. That's the problem I can get from the show, and I cannot be really invested in it because there is no real weight behind it. Well, even worse, the only elf that Númenorians can now follow and listen to is this arrogant, proudful, and that's not a real example that anyone should and would wish to follow. So I do not really blame Númenorians for not following her, and can blame Miriel for what she decides, because she decides that she will not listen to Galadriel and will not go back to Middle-earth with her. So, in the following scenes, we see Galadriel leaving Númenor. Now, she is not in chains as before, but she is also she meets at this shores of Númenor with many people. There is a whole crowd that assists her, which is somewhat strange for a prisoner that is let free only to never come back. But what do you know? She leaves, and then the petals from the white tree in the palace of Armenelos start falling. And we are earlier told, I didn't mention that really, that some Númenorians, the faithful, believe that those petals falling is a sign of the Valar mourning the fate of Númenor and the bad decisions that Númenorians make. So it is a sign that Númenorians have made a bad decision. And Queen Miriel reads that and changes her mind. Later we see her giving a speech and encouraging people to go back to Middle-earth with her and Galadriel to drive the evil out. And what is extremely strange, people agree. You know, the presented conflict was that, even if it wasn't well justified, that people hated Númenorians, hated elves, and didn't want anything to have anything connected to them. But now, all of a sudden, every second Númenorian is ready to embark on a ship and go back to help the elves to fight in Middle-earth. So this change of heart is most certainly artificial, as artificial is the whole conflict, because there is again not real weight behind it. And the last part we see is Isildur and two of his friends also enlisting for the expedition to Middle-earth. And now, world building. What did we learn about Middle-earth and Númenor in this episode? Let's start with the Southlands. There we see Ada, very respected by the orcs, who is an elf, or at least looks like an elf. We see the orcs as some sort of vampires and cannot stand the sun. But you also see that they are not so savage that one could think. They have some rituals, they have funerals, and we see that they seek indeed the sword that Theo found. And this sword possesses some strange powers. It's said to have some power over the people of the Southlands. We are yet to learn what these powers truly are. I hope we will learn. And there is also this strange ability to reforge itself. We do not see why it loses its blade, but it was reforged and then it wasn't, and it reforges itself back. I wonder what's the reason for that. We do not learn that. We also see that Southlanders do not have a habit of taking food with them for long journeys or for long staying somewhere else. Maybe that's just their tradition, but I pretty much doubt that. And we learn also that Bronwyn has some power of teleportation. Or at least she can find Theo even if he is miles away from her. Yeah, so now Númenor, we see that the people do not really like Galadriel. They seem to fear that her appearance means that they will lose their lands, their jobs, which is questionable. It's not really logical. But we see that Pharazôn uses that fear to gather power. We see that the Palantir is in possession of Queen Miriel. We see that she has seen the doom of Númenor, and she looks for a way to change that fate. And we finally see that Númenorians very quickly changed their mind and are eager to help when Miriel changed her mind. So that's basically it for world building. Now let's get down with the characters. We see much from Elrond and Durin. Elrond is really curious about what Durin does in his mines, and he discovers the secret. He swears an oath to never tell anybody about Mithril, but he also lies again that he has come to Moria only because of his friendship with Durin, like Gil-galad or Celebrimbor had nothing to do with that. But again, it is there is some valuable words that he says to Durin. There is a really good scene of him giving a lesson about his relationship with his father, and Durin uses that in his own relation with his parent. Durin seems very quick to anger, but quick also to forgive and trust Elrond and his word. He also is quick to anger with his father, but also they solve their conflict. It would be better if you have seen it all, not just the end of this conflict, but there is something to be taken from that, something worthwhile. Well, we see also Isildur in Númenor, who does not really, cannot really make up his own mind. He changes his decisions, he is not stable in them. At one point he resigns from serving in the Sea Guard, but then he does not want to go to the west, and he's just lost. We see that we cannot trust Halbrand because he betrays Galadriel at the first occasion, and we see Galadriel herself. She is, as unfortunately usual, prideful, bloodlusting, and thinks only about battle and how to exploit weaknesses of others. She also makes a strange or really unreasonable decision to attack the gods and to try to communicate with King Tar Palantir. But there is not real explanation why she does that. She just has a chance to reach Middle Earth. That's what she wanted. But she decides to fight and goes to the tower. There she talks to Miriel, but this dialogue does not achieve anything. Miriel still sends her off. It is only a divine intervention that makes the queen change her mind. So Galadriel could as well leave, and the story would be pretty much the same. Of course, Galadriel couldn't have known that, but that's the fact. Oh, yes, there are also Arondir and Bronwyn. Yeah, supposed lovers. Yeah, so they are out there, but they behave like strangers. You cannot tell me that they are lovers or they are to become. They have to spend so much time together, more to make this relationship believable. Now they are, again, seem like complete strangers, and they do their own thing. They don't really care for each other. They don't hate each other, but there is nothing between them that could be pointed out as something meaningful. So yes, that's the characters of the show. And now let's talk about the source material and what was preserved from it and what was lost. My first issue is with the mine under the lake of Mirror, which is supposed to be by the western gate of Moria, by the eastern gate of Moria, and Elrond that gets there from the western gate of Moria in just a second, even though it is supposed to be a 3 days journey. So it is different, at least different from the source material. And there is also the issue with the orcs and the language that they use. They are supposed to use black speech. There is no reason for them to communicate in English, except for the audience understanding. But it should be explained why they at one point use black speech and why they use just English. And it is not explained. There is no reason. That's the case with other languages also. There is no real reason why in many cases they're used. It's just to show off, hey, we're talking, we're using the same languages as him, but why and when? It is justified that the orcs use black speech because that's their language. Why they use English? They use it only in special occasions, when they have to communicate between different tribes that use different dialects and cannot communicate so easily. But here they just use it at will, and there is nothing that determines that. Also, there are some sort of vampires and cannot stand the sun. The orcs in the original The Lord of the Rings and in Silmarillion also despise the sun and do not want to travel by day, but when they must, they do it. And even if it's trouble, a struggle, if they feel headache, they are less capable of fighting in full sun, they still can do it. And here, the simple rays of sun that would touch them just make them terrified. They do not want to go after their prey, even if it's only few feet from their position, and well, they behave like vampires who would die if they see the sun. And then they don't use the clothes that they used earlier, so it's pretty inconsistent. There are also elements taken from Tolkien's works that are pretty faithfully presented. It is the Palantiri, it is the story of Arendil. It is put to good use, but there are also elements that are not used properly. It is basically the whole story of Númenor. We see the basic elements of that Númenor was the land of gift, but after some time Númenorians have lost their way and lost their virtue, and that's the short story, but there is so much depth to it in Tolkien's works, and here it is non-existent. We just know that Númenorians do not like elves. That's it. There's nothing more. And in Silmarillion, it was so much present, this conflict between them and the elves, this desire of Númenorians to be immortal like the elves, this envy that finally has brought doom to them. Here, it is just a matter of liking somebody or not, and some minor decisions of or some just presence of an elf that is an issue for the Númenorians. There is nothing that justifies this hate or this fear that they present, and that's just not using what was in the source material, what could be presented and what could make such better story. So that's basically the elements of the source material. And now let's talk about the final conclusions. The show has several issues. The first one is the timeline. We do not really have a chance to understand what happens when. On one hand, we see a region where the Great Forge is being built, but it must have been months at least since the great project started, because it is on such a high level of development. It is close to being finished. The foundations are laid, the walls are being built, but how much time have passed? We don't know. In Númenor, it was few days. But again, on the other hand, one of the men from the Southlands tells us that the comet that we have seen on the sky, which is the stranger that Nori meets, has been there, has passed and fallen a few weeks ago. That's our only point of reference, but we don't really have a chance to understand what happens and when it happens. Even more serious is the problem of dialogue. We get several lines that are just non sequiturs. We have no reason to expect them. They're out of nowhere. The characters say one thing and the others say something completely unrelated. And it is the case with the dialogue between Muriel and Galadriel at the beginning, and at the end of the episode it is the case with Adar and Arondir speaking. They just get to another topic, and it seems like it's they behave like it's natural, but the words that they speak are not. There is nothing connecting the lines that they say, and that's a real problem. And what is even more important is the storylines themselves that rely on certain important information that should be there, but it isn't. So that's why I cannot get invested in Tales from Númenor, because I don't really understand the conflict that is there. It is just said that people hate elves. Why? How did it happen? And what do elves think about it? Do they want to resolve the conflict? Is there any way to do it? Those important questions are left unanswered. It is why I cannot really understand the struggle of Isildur, because I don't know what he wants, what drives him to go to the west. He just wants it. And how can we follow this character if we do not know his motivations. That's why the dwarf's secrets, the whole secret about mining mithril, is just non-understandable because there is no reason given to hide it. And that's why Theo's journey and all that happens later is hard to follow, because the reason he goes there is ridiculous. The people forgetting their food. Here, again, we see this very well exemplified in this episode, that the writers want to achieve certain payoffs, but have not done proper setup. So we get those moments that are meant to be meaningful. Isildur resigning from the Sea Guard, the oath of Elrond, Theo going to retrieve some food from the village, but there is nothing meaningful behind those decisions. I cannot get invested in them. And another matter is some awfully idiotic decisions that the characters make. So those Southlanders, again, not taking their food. Isildur deciding not to just say to the captain of the ship that he resigns, but endangering everybody on this ship and getting his friends dismissed as well. And Galadriel attacking the guards, even though there is a chance for her to get killed or imprisoned for longer. And she risks her life, and for what? We don't really know that. She just decides to do it. So those decisions also make it hard to follow the story and be invested in it. But there is also something to prize, even if it is a small element. It is still meaningful. I talk again about the relationship between Elrond and Durin, the discovering the relationship with their fathers, and just their friendly rambling. It was the best part of this episode, maybe even the best so far that I have seen, but it is so little compared to those storylines that I cannot really be bothered to care about. Well, I certainly hope that it will get better, and I hope that you will join me when we will review and talk about the next episodes. So see you soon. Fare you well. Nova Year.
Subscribe right now, you little hobbitses.